It's Football Friday.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ? I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good morning and welcome to Football Friday. Hope you got the notification today. Remember, we are mornings on Friday. We go Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. here on Facebook Live. You can catch us also at iTunes for our podcasts, as well as Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, all over the place. And, of course, if you missed the show, it's always archived right here on Facebook Live. Because it's a morning show and some of you are not quite awake, and some of you, although right now it's 11 o'clock here out on the coast or wherever, or in China where we have a listener, just let folks know we're up and live on the Buddy Martin Show. What a couple of days we've had here. I'm telling you what, a record number of people tuning in to the shows on Wednesday and Thursday night. I guess America loves controversy. I don't know. Inadvertently, really sort of unintended consequence of our shows with Edgar Thompson. I want to thank Edgar, by the way, for a terrific job of being the stand-up guy and coming back on the next day to apologize for those he offended. As I said today in my post, I've never been more proud of the Gator Nation Kingdom, and I won't pontificate here, but Brendan Martin, it was his idea, and myself founded this whole thing in January 2018 on the principles of harmony and inclusion and for all Gator fans. And this is what it's about. So this is not a turf war. This is not anything that we're mad at anybody about. We're over it. I think Edgar has proven himself to be the man that I knew he was. And you folks came through in great style as well last night on the show. So thank you for that. We're often running now to talk. That's behind us. We're often now running to talk about football. Today on the program, in just a moment, we'll talk to the voice of the Florida Gators, Mick Hubert. Yeah, Mick's going to come on and tell us about, among other things, his favorite moment, right? His favorite moment of all time in covering Florida Georgia. I wonder what that would be. Any ideas? I got an idea. We'll see if it turns out that way. And Mick, of course, doing the calls for 30-something years and well known to our community. We're going to call him in just a second, followed by Gene Fredette, a new name to you, some of you. He's the Times Union columnist from Jacksonville. And also we've got Franz Beard, the Iron Duke, later on. And we got part two of Tony Barnhart in his talk, his conversation about the Florida-Georgia game, or as we call it now, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. So that's all coming up today. And we'll give you our quarterback club picks as well. But right now we're going to go see if we can get a hold of Mick, check in with him, and see what he has to offer for himself today. He has an off weekend. We're making him work. My goodness, we should leave him alone. He has an open date. So I'm sure he'll be available momentarily. That would be the voice of the Florida Gators for counting 30-something years. I'm going to let him tell us. Welcome to the program, Football Friday, Mick Hubert. How are you, Mick?
Hey, buddy, I'm doing great. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was just saying, here you are. We finally got an off week, open date, and here we are bugging you about doing the show. Apologize for that.
No problem.
Hey, listen, this is, I don't tell you about the topsy-turvy of the season. I was actually listening to my radio. I try to listen all the time because if I got to ever get this TV and to sync up with the radio or listen on TuneIn, which I could do, I was listening to you when Felipe Franks threw the interception in the end zone. And I got to tell you, Mick, you were deflated, and so was I. I mean, your voice, all the air left your lungs, and I could feel sense of disappointment, like so many hopes and dreams and things, and now this interception. But boy, it turned out differently, didn't it?
Yeah, it really has. It's been a wonderful season, and Felipe Franks has made great strides under Dan Mullen. And, he's obviously not a complete quarterback, but from where he was a year ago, and it really, his development almost mirrors the team's development, because the resiliency, buddy, of this team this year has been just great to watch. And it's not that you want to fall behind in every game. That's not really a recipe for a championship team. But by the same token, when you do get behind, they keep an even keel, and they play the next down. And as a result, they bounce back, and they rallied to win some games that we know they weren't going to rally to win those games last year. And so I can't say enough about the progress that Felipe has made, and really the team has made under Dan Mullen. It's been like the cloud is lifted, and it's been such a breath of fresh air this year. We're just halfway through.
I tell you, and we talked about this several times, it's just so much more fun to cover the Gators these days. We've been through a tough 10-year stretch, 9-year stretch, and I guess expectations have been so high. But now you have the opposite, where you didn't expect all that much, and it's turned out to be like Christmas, and there's a certain joy in the Gator Nation that I think we all kind of embrace, don't we?
Yeah, really, because I was, I tape all the games that I do, buddy. In fact, you mentioned tune in, and that's what I use. No matter where I'm at in the swamp or on the road, I am recording my broadcast via tune in because it has a record app in that. And so I just record it right on site. So I record. I've been doing this for 40 years now. Now, obviously, with the digital technology we have, but the point being, I still air check myself all the time to try and just get back. Yeah, and it's not that I'm in love with my voice. In fact, a lot of times I shriek at my own voice and go, "Oh man, there's more to call in the game." I'm listening to myself more, and not so much in addition to calling the play right, but just the words, the diction, the phrasing, the grammar, the whole style. And a lot of times I come away thinking, you called the play right, you called the play okay, but you just didn't do it right here. I'm trying to be my own worst critic on that. So when someone does criticize me, I want to have had that criticism within my own mind first. Now, that's not always possible, and sometimes people will criticize me, and that's their right. And I'll think to myself, that's not really a valid criticism. That's your opinion. That's not. I'm not playing to that. But a lot of times you can criticize me. I'll say, I'm already on it. I'm already aware of it. I need to improve this, that, or the other. Those kinds of things. And so I'm recording the game, and and I'm trying to listen to myself broadcast this game, and it's been a lot more fun this year, obviously, than it has in the past, the last 3 years in particular. And, we have a long way to go with this team. This program is a couple of years of recruiting classes away, but it just points out, buddy, just how frail things are and the small margin of victory. Because let's face it, after we lost to Kentucky, there were a lot of people that were not certain that we were going to eclipse 4 wins from last year, like it was going to be another 4-win season. And then there were some that thought, well, maybe, just maybe we can get to 6. I don't know how we're going to get 5 more, but maybe we can get to 6 and get to a bowl. And then all of a sudden, you go and beat a somewhat mediocre team, let's face it, Tennessee, but you score the most points ever in school history in Knoxville, 47. And now all of a sudden, oh, wow, really? And then it beat Mississippi State, then you beat LSU, and now people are talking 10, 11 wins. I mean, so things can change in a heartbeat. That's why
it is.
It's a week-to-week proposition.
Isn't that the truth? It's even a halftime-to-halftime proposition in some cases. Well, that leads me to interesting things I want to ask you about, and not the least of which is self-critique. Most people who don't know you or don't know professionals, they're very concerned about how they measure up to themselves. You can't measure yourself against somebody else, so you measure up to yourself. Just like an athlete, did I do the best I could? Was I wrong here? Was I too harsh? Should I have said something? And that's great. That self-assessment is really a key to why you're the consummate professional, in my opinion, is because you do that constantly. Let's talk about some of the things let's say when you thought you did a good job. What were you proudest of, even this season? Was there a moment?
Well, I tell you what, now, when things were going really great and we experienced that in the LSU game. I mean, from the Gainesville traffic on Thursday and Friday to game day to the entire buzz in the stadium, it was like, oh my goodness, it was almost, you couldn't hardly stand it. And I stepped back and I said, hey, this is the way it was all the time. You've forgotten. This is how it used to be.
Yeah.
And it got to the last couple of games that I couldn't hear myself, even my own headsets. And so it's a battle because, we have a TV effects feed, so we're getting all the microphones blended in, plus what naturally comes through my open mic and Lee McGriff's open mic. And so sometimes we got to turn everything off because we're still getting enough sound through the two open mics. And I had to turn myself down at Mississippi State. Now, they have amplified music going in there, and it's crazy. But even in the Swamp, I had to turn myself almost off. And it's extremely difficult to broadcast when you can't hear yourself. I mean, just try that. Just try and talk for 30 seconds or for 5 minutes with both hands over your ears. You've got to concentrate doubly hard just to make sure you're saying what you think you're saying. And so I said to our producer, Steve Egan, I said, I got to get some noise canceling earphones in here because too much sound is bleeding through my earphones. So I got to be able to hear. I feed off all that other ambient noise, and so it's been different this year to do that. But that's the way it always used to be. We just gotten away from it. Plus, my ears are 10, 15 years older than they used to be, also. So. But no, that self-critiquing is so important. In fact, buddy, I went for a long walk, as I do in the morning. I went for a long walk, and I was listening to one of the games that I did the other day, and I thought, man, I could have done this better. I could do this better. And it sounds like to me at some point, I said to myself, Mick, you're screaming all the time. And I think, well, you're trying to hear yourself. And so the mix has got to be a little bit better between the play-by-play voice and the ambient sound, and because you don't want to harm your voice, your vocal cords, because you're screaming. Some plays warrant you to get more excited, but I felt I'm screaming too much too often, and that's not really how I want to do it. I want energy and enthusiasm, but I don't need to be a crazy man the whole time. And so I thought to myself as I was walking, Mick, you need to go back into your box of tapes and you need to go back to listen to one of my favorite announcers of all time, the late Joe McConnell, who was the voice of the Chicago Bears during the Walter Payton era. This is going back to the 70s and 80s, and I got tapes of Joe McConnell. I said, you need to go back to listen to him. You need to go back to listen to Dick Enberg. You need to go back to listen to Don Criqui, who did Notre Dame for years and years and years. And so you've got to go back and listen to the pacing and all that because, those games were big. Those games were huge back in the 70s. I'm talking about a Rams-Cowboys playoff game that I got with Dick Enberg calling for the LA Rams. I mean, those are big games. And so even though it was 30, 40 years ago, it was, and I got to go back and recapture some of the mood and some of the essence of that because that's how I grew up listening to those kind of guys. And, it's one thing to do down and distance and, all that stuff. And that's all basic, fundamental stuff. But there's more to painting the picture and describing it and getting the audience on an emotional roller coaster. And that's some of the technical stuff of the trade. But your point is, I still take myself, I still go back and listen to the old guys doing it 30, 40 years ago. And I'll tell you one thing that is frustrating to me, really, on radio today is Don Criqui, who did Notre Dame football for years and years and years, and then stepped away, and then I think Al Wester came on, and then Don came back and did Notre Dame football until he retired. Don's about 77 years old, something like that. Still got a great voice today. And he was at NBC on a CBS national TV sportscaster. Well, when they go to hire the replacement for Don Criqui, they hire a guy who had never done play-by-play before.
Ouch.
I mean, I don't know the guy. I don't mean to be critical of the guy. I'm thinking you're replacing a legend in Don Criqui, and you've never called a game. And this is not, this is not some rummy Division III program. This is Notre Dame on a national TV or a national radio audience. He has no play-by-play experience. I'm going. It's almost like I've said sometimes, you think that you can train a monkey to do this, and just give some people all they want is the score and the time and the score in the inning. Yeah. And if you can give them that, that's all they want.
Well, monkeys can't talk, though. We know that. I know what you're saying. Yeah. But here's the thing: you covered so much there, and like you said, you have to get the mix right. I thought, well, Mick in the mix. Got to get Mick in the mix right. So you got two mix to take care of. And you're always looking to, the next moment while trying to stay in the moment. And I'm getting a number of questions online here for you about, you brought up a really interesting point. which I think is worthy of mention to the regional, if not national media, that it's so loud now for Florida football that Mick has a hard time hearing. That's an indication of something right there. That I think with a return to the days of when the Swamp was loud, and now even on the road, as you say, the cowbells, what have you. And so, and the level of your enthusiasm, obviously you're more amped up, and yet you have to check yourself not to get too emotional and too involved. But Mick, I can listen to the game and listen to your voice and tell how badly or how good they're playing, because you ebb and flow, which I like with the team. And getting back to your moment when you thought you had the moment, or let's say your favorite call of the year so far, what would it be?
I think probably the Mississippi State game of about a minute ago when we sent the safety blitz in there, Donovan Steiner.
Wow, what a moment.
Donovan Stinger Steiner now. He ran
Steiner.
in there, and I said, he blew him up. And he knocked him right out of the ballpark.
Yeah, that was good.
That was a call that went viral, and a lot of things do nowadays, and all that. But when Coach Mullen said he'd listen to it, and then when Megan Mullen had said, Dan listens to that play on his phone all the time. I'm going, oh, my goodness. I don't think the last coach ever heard anything I ever called. Here I got this coach. Listen
he didn't know you did radio.
So that was a big one. And then obviously Brad Stewart, New Orleans native, getting a pick six against Joe Burrow. We've had some
some good ones.
Tremendous play calls.
Left-handed play call.
Not by me, but by play calls on the field that have lent itself to some exciting radio moments.
Well, that's for sure. Let's just digress a moment and go back to what number is this for you for Florida, Georgia?
Well, this is my 30th year.
Okay, I saw you around 30th is what I thought, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember the first one in 1989, the Gators had the lead and lost the game. And I can't tell you how many people said to me, boy, Mick, you've experienced the essence of Florida, Georgia, because there's so many times we've had the lead and we've lost the lead to Georgia, and it's always wait till next year. And we waited till the next year, and that's when Steve came in, and as we know, things change. And it may have been a story even in one of the books that you wrote about how the older players had talked about how they had kind of harassed the freshmen, just freshman hazing and all of that.
Right.
And Steve said, we're not going to – Coach, that's one of our traditions. And Steve said, well, you know what? We got another tradition around here that's going to stop, too. That's losing to Georgia.
That's true.
I think it's one of the great stories.
Yeah, that is true. He was great. It's great to see him back in the game again and coaching. A couple questions, if you don't mind, from the listeners are now online. Sure. One of them wants to know, Rowdy wants to know, was the LSU game the loudest it has been in a while?
Yeah, it was. It was. I remember it being pretty enthusiastic in the previous sellout, which was 3 years prior, that Ole Miss game on that Saturday night when Will Greer was quarterback and we beat him 38-10. That was a pretty raucous place. But I think this one was more. And we had a string of 127 consecutive sellouts come to an end. I think it's 127, or it may have been 137, but it came to an end, buddy, in 2011. And so probably in the last is 137 games in a row. Now you figure do the math. 6-7 home games a year. Wow. That was over 20 years of consecutive sellouts. And probably in the last 7 years, I think we've had obviously less than 7 sellouts. So that's been the loudest it's probably been in probably almost a decade, probably since the 09 Tebow season. Probably.
Yeah, and people want to know, and what was the loudest game at the Swamp? We've had discussions. I know 97 FSU had to be one of the loudest. People were comparing the interception at the end of the game, LSU as being the loudest ever. What do your ears tell you? When is the loudest the Swamp has ever been?
Well, yeah, I think probably 97 would probably be there. That's the first time that I uttered the phrase, this place is an insane asylum. And I've used it 2 or 3 times since. In fact, I used it the last LSU game when I said, yes, indeed, this place is an insane asylum. That wasn't an original call by me. It was reprised over something I said initially 21 years prior. I do remember from my tenure here, the first, if I can put this in quotes, the first loudest crowd goes back to when they expanded the north end zone my first year in 1989, we didn't have the end zone there, and then we did in 90. But the first loudest crowd would have been when Florida beat Tennessee in 1991, and Larry Kennedy had the interception against Tennessee, and that was I think it was a night game in the 91 season, which would have been the second year of the completion of the north end zone. That was the loudest I'd ever heard the Swamp. But that's probably been surpassed because back in those days, we probably were not quite at 90,000, even though we haven't done any more stadium expansions since then. I think it got louder for 97 and obviously some of those Tebow games and those national championship years.
So tell me again, I missed what you said. What was the game that you think was the loudest? Which one?
Well, 97.
97
Florida State was probably
I think so too. That's
when I said the insane asylum in the Swamp.
That's the famous quote. Yes.
Yeah, and now of course it was pretty loud in the year, and that may have been 95 when we rallied from down at the half to Tennessee and beat them.
That was a loud one too.
48 unanswered points, 62-37.
Yeah,
the
for sure.
Going crazy there. So,
sure.
But that was the norm. That was the way it was back in those days.
Yes.
People say, "Oh, really? Your memory's losing. You're losing it." But your memory wasn't like that every game. It really was. It really was.
It really was. I agree with you.
Because we were all on that magic carpet ride, weren't we, buddy?
Oh, man.
To obviously have the 84 title stripped away. And, and then Steve comes along, the best record in 90. That was great. And then officially win it in 91 and then repeat it in 93, 94, 95, 96. This was a rapid ascent.
Exactly.
And so every year was getting better.
Exactly. All right, one more for you, Mick. I could keep you on here about an hour and a half, but you never get anything done, and I've got to let you go because I know you got things to do. But let's talk about Florida, Georgia, the moment for you, and then a quick assessment of where this team stands right now. All of a sudden, a game that was a no-hoper for the Florida Gators 4 weeks ago is a winnable game. First, your moment in Florida, Georgia that you recall, the call that you made, the one you remember the most.
Yeah, that's a hard one to call, but that really is because I just know this. Since Steve came around in 1990 and changed the direction of the series in Florida's favor, it's been victory after victory after victory. But I do remember how badly I felt after we lost, and I think it was the 97 game. When Jim Donnan was there, and they got us that one year. That felt terrible because we had won about 7 or 8 in a row,
right?
And I didn't feel too good. But I guess one of the more famous games for me to remember was in '93, and that's when it was a rain and a quagmire on the field, and Danny complained that he really couldn't get a good grip on the ball, and Steve said, "Well, let's put Terry Dean in there then." And what he did was he basically put Terry Dean in there to hand the ball off to Eric Rhett because Rhett ran it 41 times and sloshed his way to like 140-some yards or whatever, and that was a tight game there. That was a tough one because it was just an onslaught of rain, and I remember that one vividly. I think maybe in the game, might have been the year before that, 92. I could have been 92 when Judd Davis, I think, kicked 4 field goals in a sloppy track.
Mud.
Didn't think, how could a place kicker get footing? And Judd was just
got it all.
4 of them through the uprights.
Yeah. One caller says the timeout game, Urban Meyer was one, but that was,
Anthony Locke.
Yeah.
Got the timeout called. It was clearly visible on the videotape. I'll tell you, I think that was the year. Also, this is interesting. As I went back some years later and rewatched them, and I did this when Will Muschamp was here. I went back and watched that game again, and at the very end of that game, it was quite amazing to see Will Muschamp wearing that Georgia uniform put his arms around Terry Jackson, and Terry put his arms around Will Muschamp, and here's a Florida Georgia guy walking off the field arm in arm because they had played Pop Warner football together in Gainesville 10 years earlier.
What a moment.
I did that because now Will Muschamp was our coach in, I think it was like 2011 or 2012.
That's cool.
Look at it. Yeah, in 93, 94, here's Will and Terry walking off the field.
That's awesome.
Long-time buddies.
Well, he's Mick Hubert. You know that voice, and we'll be listening to him a week from Saturday, as we like to do, and you and Lee did a terrific job. Thanks for spending some time with us, Mick. I hope we'll get a chance to do it again later this year, and who knows, maybe it'll be after a win over the Bulldogs. You never know.
Well, we got a chance, and again, as I said, week-to-week deal. I mean, Georgia's a pretty good football team, and I've done some of the prep work, not all of it, but some of it this week, and their numbers are very, very similar to last year's numbers. And all of a sudden, because they lost one game, in Baton Rouge to a hungry, angry LSU team. A lot of Georgia people are now questioning, oh, my gosh, oh, boy, oh. And they're still really good. Yeah. And the Gators got to play really well to beat them. But we got a chance.
Got a meaningful game to play.
Yeah. This is going to be quite a game in 8 days.
Both ranks, and it's going to be fun. Hey, Mick, thanks so much for spending time with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
See you in the swamp. Thanks. Or see you in Jacksonville. All right. It's good stuff. I like that. I like that him talking about how, it's so loud that he can't hear. All right, thanks very much. We'll take this time out real quick, and we'll come back and we'll hear from Gene Frenette. We got Tony Barnhart coming up, and we've also got the Iron Duke standing by, who will be joining us in a moment to give us his picks, and we got some picks to talk to you about.
No one ever plans a car accident. Having a plan after you've been in one, however, can make a world of difference. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. After meeting with Dan and his team, you'll know your case matters, that you matter, and that Dan will fight hard to get you just results. If you've been severely injured through no fault of your own by a careless or reckless driver, you need Daniel L. Hightower.
Since 1976, I want to tell you about Red Medical Research, just ahead of Gene Frenette. Red Medical Research, of course, does great things to the community. As you see, our Scott Bentley Trophy Award winner this week, Red Star of the Week. Congratulations to Chemo Clark. Also, a superior medical research facility with a proven reputation. It's a high-quality clinical research team. Red Star Medical Research brings cutting-edge clinical research trials to Ocala in areas like Alzheimer's disease, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraine, and fibromyalgia, along with many other conditions that affect our community. You can call them today to find out how to get involved in the trials. Call them at 352-629-5800 or log on to rentstar.net and check it out. When they say Rentstar Medical Research, what they mean by seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. All right, let's see if we can get a...
No one ever plans a car accident. Having a plan after you've been in one, however, can make a world of difference. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for... All
right. Right now, we're going to take you to this and see if we can't get in the place we need to be. It's playing tricks on us this morning. Give a call to Gene Frenette. Hope your Friday's going well. It's going well here, except for a few little miscues by the operator. That would be me. So let's stand by and see if we can get a hold of Gene Frenette. And check it out with him. Listen, I don't know what the line is. You guys know, put it up there. I think Florida, Georgia, which is a little earlier, obviously, is going to be about a touchdown. That's my recollection. Do you think it should be more or less? And do you like the Gators if they, in fact, get more than a touchdown? You got to think about them there, and maybe some people even like them straight up. You never know. It's going to be interesting, and like Mick said, it's a meaningful game. It's a competitive game, and it's a game which we can get our blood pumping again, right? On this one, as if the season hadn't given us enough blood to pump. It certainly has been doing that. So, and of course, it's always a big one in Jacksonville. Naturally, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. For some reason or another, I've gotten Gene Frenette has gotten calls from me all day, but this would be the voice of Gene Frenette of the Florida Times Union. Gene, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, buddy. How about you?
Good to talk to you. Sorry we went a little long there. Mick Huber got excited about some of the games he's called this year. He was just telling me that the noises have been so deafening, it's been hard to hear sometimes. So, yeah, it's kind of like the old days, Gene. You covered this team back in the day, and I was asking Mick about the loudest day at the Swamp. I don't know what your recollection is, but mine was the 97 FSU game, and that's what he said, too. You've been there a bunch. What's the loudest moment you remember in the Swamp?
I remember this very distinctly. Played Bama, I can't remember what year it was, sometime in the 90s. And it was a very defensive struggle type game. It was like, I want to say the Gators led like 3-0 in the second half, if you can believe that. And now the Gators pulled away from them at the end. But I remember in the third and fourth quarter of that game, thinking to myself, it's the only time that I've ever really covered Florida. The two times where I thought the stadium, the noise, the decibel level caught my attention was that Alabama game, and I'm remiss to remember what year it was. Whatever year Florida won something like 30-6 or something like that. But
well, Spurrier's first year, maybe was it? I don't know. That was a game. That game was in Alabama. So I don't know when that would be. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
And the one other game that I always remember, and maybe it wasn't so much for the loudness of it as it was the scene after the game, and that was when they beat Southern Cal in Gainesville and Charlie Pell led the parade of players all around the stadium.
Yeah.
Those are the two games that stand out in my mind for crowd atmosphere, crowd noise.
Yeah. Let's talk about the big game. And by the way, just so you know, we've reverted back to it. We're calling it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I understand the political correctness and why they did it years ago and the policies that were passed. But in my opinion, that's a tradition. Look, some people abuse alcohol. Okay. That's just how it is. And I know they didn't want to glamorize alcohol, but still, nothing wrong with a good cocktail party. Nothing wrong with calling it what it really has been, because it's a celebration of football and a border war at the same time. So we're calling it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And I know up there's an argument about whether it's Florida, Georgia, or Georgia, Florida, depending on who you talk to. What do you call it, Gene Fournette?
I usually kind of call it the Georgia-Florida game, but I'm okay with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party because I think it's part of. You can't write the history of the Georgia-Florida game without referencing the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and it also pays homage to a friend of mine, Bill Castells, and I just think that hey, not every cocktail does a cocktail have to have alcohol in it? Can you have a cocktail without having alcohol?
Yeah, you have a Virgin Mary, right?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so yeah.
I mean, listen,
Shirley Temple, for that matter.
If somebody gets offended by, I get it. I know what happened in the 80s,
Yeah.
and some of that was very obviously not a good reflection on the game and some of the behavior. But I mean, my goodness, that's part of Georgia-Florida lore, Florida-Georgia lore, whatever you want to call it. And, I'm fine with you resurrecting it.
Yeah, well, good. And speaking of which, it's funny you mentioned Bill Castells. Because, and I mean this in a good way, I think, Gene's been there so long, and you have, and you don't see that much anymore. And you're the modern day Bill Castells, and I mean that in a positive way. So you've been there and seen it.
I don't know that I carry the cachet that Bill Castells did, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah, well, good for you for sticking it in there and hanging in for your community and doing all these years. So when I reference the Florida-Georgia game, other than Mick Hubert, who's called 30, and you've been there longer than that, you are the, I hate to say historian, that's what they call me because I'm old, but you kind of know the history of this game, and it's lost none of its luster. And we've got what might be, I'll stop short of calling it epic because we don't know the outcome. We got what could become one of the best ever, depending on the outcome and which side you're on. This game has got gravitas all of a sudden.
Yeah, the one thing that I always I always like to see in Georgia-Florida, and I know a lot of people don't always believe that. I honestly don't care who wins the game. I really don't.
Right.
What I want to see is a good game. I want to see a lot of back and forth. And speaking of back and forth, and I'm probably going to write about this possibly for our special section. One of the things that if you look back at the history of the Georgia-Florida game, there aren't many long coaching rivalries in the game. There may be two. Wally Butts and Bob Woodruff spent the entire 1950s coaching against each other in that game. Vince Dooley and not Ray Graves, the guy that came after Doug Dickey, went head-to-head 9 years. I'm kind of hoping that Dan Mullen and Kirby Smart I'd like to see those guys have that kind of run.
Good point.
For the next 10 years. And, it's just, to me, that's what makes rivalries interesting. And to me, I found the worst part of the rivalry, and I know the Florida fans are going to feel the opposite, during the Spurrier years, because there was no rivalry.
Boring.
Nobody put up a fight against Spurrier, Spurrier got Georgia coaches fired is what he did.
Yeah.
I'd like to see, it's the same thing with like Ohio State and Michigan. I thought one of the things I thought when Harbaugh and Meyer kind of both started out around the same time, I thought, gosh, it's going to be a great rivalry. Well, it hasn't been so far. Urban's gotten the better of the deal. I like to see back and forth between two great coaches, which is what you had when Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler. That's what I'd kind of like to see with Dan Mullen and Kirby Smart.
Gator fans will remember this, and they won't like it, but the truth is that when Bowden was at Florida State and Spurrier was at Florida, there was some, and although Bowden wound up with an edge on Spurrier, those were some of the best. That at one point, I could make a case of that being the best rivalry in the country at that time. It didn't have the history of Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, and all that. But at that point, those games, Spurrier points out, FSU was in the top 5 every year. Spurrier was winning the SECs, and they were going hammer and tong at it. And at that point, I think that's as good a rivalry as Florida ever had, don't you?
Yes. You got combined 3 national championships between them. Who knows how many conference championships? It might be something like 20.
Yeah.
Those were epic days, and of course, there was playing to the echo of the whistle controversy.
Yeah, boy, national championship game.
Rematch, it had all the colorful elements, and you had, probably 2 of the top 5 or 6 greatest college football coaches of all time, going head to head in that game.
Right, and what a great, and I can take you back to the FSU series way back in the day when there was the Ray Graves, Bill Peterson, never say never, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of national scope, that Spurrier team versus Bowden's FSU team, that was as good as it got. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions before I let the time get away, and I find myself blowing the whole next break. Gene, let's talk about this game coming up, and let's take the Florida angle and the fact that Dan Mullen has done nothing short of a remarkable job to this point. What happens to his career and his place in history if he marches in there and what's it called now? Not Everbank anymore. What's it called?
It's TIAA Bank Field.
Whatever that bank thing is. TIAA Bank. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be ignorant about it. This changed. And if they go in, if he goes there and beats Georgia now, what does that do to his career? He's got to be the hottest coach in the country right now.
Yeah, it would be. It's really unbelievable the job that he's done. And and it also speaks to what I've always felt. People get all caught up in recruiting. They get caught up in, get this 3-star here, 4-star here, 5-star here. And that's all well and good to get the guys with the stars by their name. But I'm telling you, and this is something college football fans do not pay attention to, what matters more than anything in recruiting is getting a kid who is coachable, getting a kid who has a symbiotic relationship with the coaching staff where he can develop. And I feel that that's what Dan Mullen and this coaching staff have done here. They've taken a group of kids, and, some of them are really, have had a lot of, are highly advertised, well-hyped guys. Other guys, maybe not so much. But he's taken the team and made it better than the sum of its parts.
No doubt.
And that's what a coach's job is to do. And, did we see that coming after the Kentucky game?
No.
Maybe not.
No, I'd say no. Unequivocally, no.
But that, to me, is a credit to Dan Mullen that he's been able to help this team elevate itself
right
after what was a very significant setback, and I'm sure it had the fan base being very skeptical about whether he was going to be able to bring them back.
No doubt. I got 30 seconds. Tell me what the temperature is now, not on the thermometer, but in terms of this game in Jacksonville, and what's it likely to be like about a week from now?
Well, the temperature for the game Sunday, where the Jaguars are playing the Texans, is going to be about 75.
Yeah. Well, how about the football temperature for the Florida-Georgia game? I meant, what is the temperament?
Yeah, I know you did. I'm not one of these guys who looks at what the weather's going to be a week from now. I'm just hoping it'll be about 68. That'd be great.
All right.
But,
good luck to the Jags.
What the temperature is, fans are going to be at a fever pitch for this one because there's a lot of,
a lot at stake.
Hey, listen, the winner of this game is going to, it's probably got about a 80% chance of winning the SEC East, or in Georgia's case, maybe more than that. So actually, I think Florida will win the SEC East too, because Kentucky's still going to play Georgia,
right?
So there's going to be another loss for one of those guys.
Right.
So I think whoever wins this game is going to be playing Alabama.
Unfortunately, there's good news. Good news and bad news, on that one for sure. Yeah. Hey, Gene, thanks.
Nobody saw that coming a month ago.
Exactly. Gene, thank you so much for being on. We'll get you on again if you're available sometime. Appreciate it. Enjoy this Jaguar games, and we'll see you up at what is it, TIAA Bank? Is that the name of the field? TIAA Bank?
TIAA Bank. That's
okay,
right.
Thank you, Gene. Gene Fournette from the Florida Times. Thank you very much. All right, Franz Beard's wondering, where are we? And we're going to go right to him in just 1 second. We got Tony Barnhart, which we got to get on before the day is over, so we'll have to get that on too. And let me get this in real fast to you and tell you about Center State Bank, which of course is our our bank and our sponsor, which we're thankful for. Center State Bank, of course, is known for its community involvement. Also, it's a bank that values things like core values and relationship banking, faith and family, world-class service, long-term horizons on their financial. And by the way, great chocolate chip cookies if you go by there. My bank's located the one above here over on Silver Springs Boulevard in Ocala. You can go to centerstatebank.com and get the one closest to you. There are 82 locations in 30 Florida counties. Log on to centerstatebank.com, find out what's near you. This one is Silver Springs Boulevard in Ocala. Call 352-368-6800. Center State Bank, centered on community and customer service. I want to also say that I'll be eating here tonight. No, not there, but I'll be eating at Mark's. This is a Mark's Prime commercial. Unfortunately, this is not the commercial, but you get the picture. And the fact is, this is where we'll be tonight. We'll be over at Mark's, and we'll be dining on some terrific.
No one ever plans a car accident. Having a plan after you've been in.
The other, yeah. So we will get back to this and see if we can get a hold of Franz Beard. Check him out. And we'll be at Mark's Prime tonight, dining over there. And we will be eating some good food at a good place. This is the ambiance there. You can check it out. Mark says 2 locations to serve you. If you want to go there, you can call locally. Gainesville 352-336-0076. And Ocala 352-402-0097. They have complimentary valet parking there, and they have terrific food and terrific service. It's a place, the ambiance you're going to love because, it's a place you go and you feel good about being there. And they take pride in their unique dining experience. So you want to be sure and check that out for a special evening. Mark's Prime, located in Ocala and Gainesville. Log on to marksprimesteakhouse.com and find out what I mean by a unique dining experience. You'll be glad you went. All right, we're going to see if we can get a hold of Francis Beard. I know he's waiting for us, and he's waiting to talk about those poodles. He hates them some Georgia, I'll tell you what. And later on, we'll be able to get a hold of the interview with Tony Barnhart as well. So on a Football Friday. Good to hear from Mick. It's good stuff with Mick. He would be Iron Duke himself, Franz Beard, and he joins the program on a Football Friday. I'm sure even though the Gators have an open date, France will be grinding away on the television set. Won't you, Francis? Well, I guess Francis is not going to answer today, too. This is my day for this kind of stuff. Well, we'll try him again. Francis, are you there? Are you there, Francis? Hello. All right, Francis, I'm going to have to dial you again, buddy. Apologize, folks. They're playing tricks on me today, again. It's one of those things where we seem to be having problems with our... All right, see if we can get friends here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Hello.
All right, Francis, I think I got you this time. I don't see you yet, but I think you'll pop up. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
All right.
And
I'm not seeing you yet, but anyway, I've got you here. There you are. There's that good-looking mug there. Francis Beard, the Iron Duke. How are you, my friend?
It's Friday, and there's no football this weekend that the Gators watch, so I get to pull against a lot of people.
Oh, okay.
And I get to watch people I hate and pull for the other team.
Oh, the other side. All right. Well, anybody in particular you want to mention?
Let's see. We got those people out west. We got in Tallahassee. They get Wake Forest Gump, and I'm pulling for Wake Forest Gump this weekend.
I'll give you some games to even pick here in just a minute, and that way you can do, since I don't have anybody to pick against except my quarterback club buddies. I'll get you to do some picking. Anything new? I haven't talked to you since Monday. We needed a little break there. Now we're counting it down. I've had some good guests this week after I talked to you. Mick Hubert was just on talking about the fact that he thinks that it's so loud in the swamp he has a hard time hearing himself. So loud calling games. Mississippi State was so loud. So we had the discussion about, you and I have talked about this already, but we had a discussion about, which is the loudest game. I think we both agree it was FSU 97. That's what Mick said. What were your thoughts about that?
In the swamp, I think personally it was FSU 91.
91,
Yep. Even though the stadium was a lot smaller.
It was smaller, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then that 14-9 game, it was so loud that everybody I know had their hands over their ears, and their ears still hurt.
I'll be darned.
Probably the best defensive game that's ever been played in the swamp. Wasn't decided, the last play, like next to the last play of the game, there was Casey Weldon makes a throw into the end zone trying to hit Ampley, and a double ricochet, and Florida ends up with the ball. And, absolutely brilliant. The 97 game would be probably my second, and then the third would be the field goal gets hit and gets tipped by Jarvis Moss in 2006.
Yeah, I think that was right up there with FSU, because I was there and on the field, so I can tell you that it really was loud down there as you were. So that was amazing.
But those would be my top three. The loudest place I've ever been on the road, without a doubt, was Alabama 2005 and LSU 2007.
2007, I wasn't in Alabama, but I can tell you, well, we told the story too many times already about how many people were there, 80,000 in the stadium and probably another 80,000 on the outside, whatever. And it was such a loud, there were so many close plays that we remember there were 5 times that the Hat went for it on 4th down and made it, including the game-winning drive, Jacob Hesser's run to ice the clock. So yeah, that was it. It feels like everything has gone right for Mullen, and we've said this a bunch of times. So I know it sounds like a cliche, but ever since he got off the plane chomping, he's made all the right calls. A couple of hiccups here and there along the way, Kentucky being one of them. Turns out Kentucky didn't really hurt him. Kentucky made him better. So consequently, and again, friends, we've covered every possible theme. I was thinking today, if I put all the things down on a piece of paper that have happened this seasons, you can go through the play call, you can go through the interceptions, you can go through all of it, the improvement of the offensive line, which you've talked about a lot since the beginning. You can talk about a kid named Brad Stewart, who a lot of people didn't know unless they followed recruiting, and I didn't, that he pops up out of nowhere. His name wasn't even mentioned the first 2 weeks of the season, and now he's on the so-called mid-season All-American team of Sports Illustrated. I question that, but there's other guys who are better. But nonetheless, there's been some surprises, and 95% of them have been positive. And I know we've covered this a lot, but one more time as we count it down toward the Florida-Georgia, our world's largest outdoor cocktail party, what's the one thing that'll resonate the most about this team that'll be one of the hallmarks of the 2018 squad?
Well, it's going to sound kind of a mundane thing, kind of a, one of these things, like it's like getting, I guess, socks and underwear for Christmas. It's nice that people thought about you and you got something you can use, but it's not. There's not a lot of it doesn't exactly stir the imagination. But the thing that I'm going to remember about this is that we've seen improvement, constant, steady improvement. It hasn't been spectacular in any shape or form, but it has been steady. And in the steadiness that we're seeing a very good football team evolve from what wasn't going to be a good football team after week two. After week two, we're sitting there and we're not the only ones who are thinking, can these guys make it to 6-6? And now we're looking at the possibility of 10-2, 11-1. It's entirely possible. But it couldn't have been possible except, what's that old saying? You got to walk before you run. Well, they keep walking, they keep walking, they keep walking. Now all of a sudden they're trotting, and who knows? If they beat Georgia, it's a dead sprint to the end of the season.
Good point. And I think when you expand your mind, you think about what's possible to come from where we all were 10 months ago, which is, there was like shambles, to come to this point in time now where this is all things are possible, including, as ludicrous as some it would have said this sound said 6 months ago, a possible run of the table to win, to get to the national championship game, and that is even in play. To say something like that would have been insane 6 months ago, and yet here we are, and we're talking about it.
Well, exactly, and one of the things I think that we tend to overlook, buddy, is that each game and the development we see in players, and each game with the progress that's being made and the improvement that's being made, if you think back, it really makes you understand and realize just how bad things were here. Just exactly how bad that Jim McElwain had left this program. And he got this program to a point of really, really being on the verge of spending a lot of years down in the lower realms of the SEC. He took the program downhill in a bad way. And I think what we've realized is, with the constant improvement, with the steadiness that we see now from this coaching staff and from these players buying in, we're realizing just how close we were to bad times, and just how fortunate we are to be on this path toward really good times.
Yeah, it's a great path, certainly is, friends. All right, friends, a couple of minutes to go here. I don't know if we're going to have time to pick these games or not, but we'll give it a shot and see if you'll help me out. I've got my quarterback club buddies who normally pick these games, but they're not available today. It's an off week, and so let's take these games and see if we can get. I don't have all the point spreads, so let me give you Hang on a second. Here we are. It's, well, the games elude me at this moment in time, but let's just take a couple here. Let's start with Auburn Ole Miss. I believe Auburn is a slight favorite. Who do you like in that game?
I like Auburn to win the game. I think Auburn's defense will play well enough, and nobody makes an offense look good like the Ole Miss defense, except for maybe UConn, which has the worst defense in the country.
Need we even try to pick this? And by the way, I agree. I do think I think Auburn will kindly rebound a little bit on that game and win. Alabama and Tennessee. Need we even pick that one?
Well, Alabama will cover the spread in the first. Let me put it this way: with 10 minutes to go in the first half, Alabama will have already covered the spread.
Okay. Now I found my list. Let's go over them real fast. You said you like Auburn, right?
Yes.
Okay. I've got Auburn, and my partners Danny and Freddie both got Auburn. All right, so let's go. Oklahoma at TCU. TCU is an 8-point underdog. I've got Oklahoma here. Danny's got TCU, and Fred's got Oklahoma. Who do you like?
Oklahoma will win this game by at least 3 touchdowns.
Okay. Oregon and Washington State. I took Washington State -3, which is a lot, I know. But I think they got their offense going. Danny has, let's see, Danny has picked, let's see, Oklahoma, TCU, Oregon, Washington. Danny has a big bet on Oregon, and Fred is taking Oregon. Who do you like?
Wazoo.
Okay. A couple more to go with Franz Beard. Utah State at Wyoming. Wyoming's a 14.5-point underdog. And right now, I've got Washington. I got Wyoming. Danny has Utah State, and Fred's got Utah State. Who you got? 14.5 points. Utah State.
Utah State wins and covers easily.
All right. Well, that pretty well covers it. Did I give you Mississippi State LSU? No, I didn't. Mississippi State.
No, you didn't. No, I like LSU in this ball game, and I think LSU is going to win handily. This is a game I've been going back and forth in my mind.
Me too.
And I've never wavered over the thought that LSU would win. It's just been whether they win a close call or win comfortably. I think it's comfortable.
Right. Fred's got Mississippi State. Danny's got LSU, and I've got LSU. So there you have it. There's the picks. Francis, I'll talk to you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, I plan on it. You also.
All right, my friend. Appreciate that very much. All right, Franz Beard. He's the Iron Duke. All right, let's see if we can wrap up the show and get something right for a change here. We talked earlier in the week to our friend Tony Barnhart about this Florida-Georgia game and about what he thought about it. And I'll see if I can round this baby up and play it for you. Let's see here if I can get it going. Hope this is not the long one. Hold on. Here it is. Tony Barnhart on Florida-Georgia. What does he call it?
I refer to it as the Georgia-Florida game, and then when my Florida fans correct me, I said, excuse me, it's the Florida-Georgia.
Whichever way the wind blows on that one. Well, it's been a long time since we had one this important, and certainly when we talked over the summer, we didn't see this coming. And it feels like Georgia has just maybe settled in to a point. I don't want to say going south, but Florida's definitely going north here, and it's going to be a competitive game. I don't think we thought that 3 weeks ago, Tony.
No, because Florida had, think about where things stood when Kentucky beats Florida, and you're asking all sorts of questions about the Gators. But since that game, Florida has just, the thing that's impressed me the most about Florida is they found different ways to win, and Coach Mullen has said a lot about that. The fact that they, did a sort of a low-scoring, conservative game against Mississippi State, and then against other teams like Tennessee, they get turnovers and score a bunch of points, which means they can play any style. And the defense has just made incredible strides. So you can see Todd Grantham's fingerprints all over that defense. And so I've got to admit, I've been very impressed with the way Florida's played in the last month or so.
Let's take a look at the strengths of both teams. We know the situation for Florida is the running game. Naturally, the running game has been the strength of this team, and to have three running backs like that, and Piron especially has been tearing it up. And last week, Jordan Scarlett got loose. This team's running backs are good, and their wide receivers are very good, and they have a lot of them. I guess the X factor was the quarterback, and it turns out Felipe Franks can play the position, can he?
Yes, and because, listen, we knew that one of the strengths of Dan Mullen, we've always known, is the ability to develop quarterbacks. And we knew that, Felipe Franks is never going to be a great quarterback, but we knew that Dan Mullen would get the most out of his ability. And I tell you, I've been impressed. He's played under control. He's been good at his decision making. He doesn't, get real loose with the ball anymore. So I think Dan Mullen is getting everything out of Felipe Franks' talent that he can.
Let's switch over to Georgia. Who knew we'd have a quarterback controversy? I guess we can call it that. A lot of Bulldog fans think it should be Fields starting. And Jake Fromm, turns out he couldn't. You can't put the weight of the game on his shoulders, at least based on what we saw against LSU. Give me your assessment of those two quarterbacks.
Exactly. Well, Jake Fromm is the starting quarterback. Here's a guy that was completing 72% of his passes. But Jake Fromm is a much more effective quarterback when Georgia can run the football and Fromm can do the play-action thing. LSU committed to stopping the run. Georgia got 113 yards rushing or something like that. And when Fromm was under pressure, and most of the time when he got back to pass, you could see it out in front of you. There were no receivers open. I thought LSU played just a remarkable game. And the thing about Justin Fields, look, Justin Fields is very, very talented. He was either the number one or the number two high school quarterback in America, along with the kid from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence. And people are wanting this guy to play. And it always happens, and they want to know why he didn't play that much last week against LSU. The answer, buddy, is that while Justin Fields is very, very talented, he wasn't ready for Tiger Stadium on a late Saturday afternoon. And not many
quarterbacks are, as a matter of fact.
That's exactly right. And I think that Kirby Smart didn't say this to me, but I know enough people. That was not the answer for that game. What Georgia needed to do was run the ball better and throw the ball better and make fewer mistakes. But nobody was going to beat LSU last Saturday. So, you're probably going to see Justin Fields against the Gators. But again, this is his first Georgia-Florida, Florida-Georgia game. And it is a different deal playing in this game.
Yes, it is that for sure. Everybody thought the big advantage might be Georgia's offensive line and Georgia's running game. DeAndre Swift is a terrific running back and a receiver. And certainly Holyfield gets that tough smash mouth yardage up there. But it hasn't, maybe it was LSU, except Florida rushed for 200 yards on those guys. And you expect Georgia to do that or more. What happened into the running game? What happened to the offensive line?
Georgia's offensive line has been banged up. Ben Cleveland, one of the better players, has been banged up all season long. And they just simply could not get any kind of push. The other thing is I thought Georgia gave up on the run too early. They just decided, that we can't run on these guys. They should have, in my opinion, they should have run the ball more. But listen, Todd Grantham knows Georgia. He worked there.
Yes.
He coached for them. He coached against them. He knows Georgia. He knows the game plan to beat Georgia is to slow down the run, keep Georgia under 150 yards rushing, and bet that the quarterback can't beat you. I think that's a good game plan. I'll be surprised if Florida tries to do anything other than that.
Well, Georgia knows Todd Grantham, too, and there's been a little bit of bad blood in that relationship over the years. And since he was at Mississippi State, they didn't play every year. It's the first time back for a while. So will that little rivalry flare up during Florida-Georgia or Georgia-Florida weekend, Tony?
Well, as you know, buddy, Coach Grantham's got a little bit of an edge to him. It did not surprise me when I looked up and saw the coaches getting into it at Vanderbilt the other day. That Todd was not far away. But that, you know what, I like Coach Grantham. I think he's a very good football coach, and he will be very intense for this game.
What exactly happened there? Did he gave up too many points? Georgia fans didn't like his defense. What went down there?
At the end of the day, I am not completely sure. But there was a conflict. He had another opportunity and decided to take advantage of it. And he went to Louisville, and that was not the best of experiences. I'll let him tell you that story someday.
Yeah.
And then he got to Mississippi State, which he absolutely loved. Obviously, when Coach Mullen got the opportunity to come back to Florida, he was going to come with him. He was, but let me tell you what, Todd Grantham was a very effective defensive coordinator when he was at Georgia.
Yeah. All right, Tony Barnhart, second part of the interview I had with him earlier in the week. That's going to wrap it up for Football Friday. You folks have a good, safe weekend. A lot of weddings and things going on this weekend because open date. So have a good time. Thank you, our guest today. Especially enjoyed Mick Hubert's, his recollections and reminiscences and his thoughts about this team. Thanks to Gene Fournette, first time he's been on this show. We had to have him talk about the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Of course, Sir Francis Beard himself, the Iron Duke, Tony Barnhart. Appreciate that, and thanks to my buddies Danny and Fred for their picks for the off weekend. Until next Monday night, we won't be seeing you this weekend. Enjoy your time. I'm Buddy Martin, and have a happy Football Friday.